Okay, we're ready. Go ahead, Steve. This will be Steve Hart from Langston University. Steve is going to talk to us a little bit about economical feeding programs for the doe. Go ahead, Steve.
Okay, just a second. Okay. Just want to talk a little bit about feeding does. Goats like diversity in their diet and are generally healthiest and most productive with diversity in their diet. But goats can do well without diversity, and for most situations, they do not have diversity. This makes nutrition a little more complex for us. First thing we want to do is describe the nutrients required for health and production, discuss how to provide for these nutrients. We're going to evaluate animal productivity and body condition to fine-tune our feeding program. And we'll mention the use of the Langston Interactive Nutrient Calculator to determine how much to supplement. What does a goat need nutrition for? Maintenance, which is basically keeping the body warm. Walking, goats walk more than cattle or other animals, and they also will stand up on their legs browsing. And this takes more energy than other animals for activity. Reproduction, in general, most of our animals we want to reproduce. We want those does to have kids for us. And of course, they need to feed those kids milk till the kids get off on their own and are able to be weaned. And we want kids and adults at certain times of the stage of their body to grow. And if we're interested in the show ring, we may be interested in fattening them. We want them to jiggle a little bit in the show ring. What are our production goals? Do we just want to maintain a dry goat? And in some cases that is true, where they are using goats for just browsing weeds and taking control of weeds. They don't want to have kids, or using wethers for that. We want the goat to gestate with twins or triplets. Usually we will. And if she's a doeling, we want her to not only gestate, but be able to grow some. And then after they kid, how much milk do we want the doe to produce? Or how much will she produce? And then how fast we want the resultant kid to grow. So we've got to have production goals in mind. Randy, it's not letting me change.
Okay. Okay, we're recording again.
Okay, nutrients that are required for goat production, and I might say for any animal, including humans, water, protein, carbohydrates, fats, minerals, and vitamins. Nutrients are substances that aid in the maintenance of life. Energy is not a substance. However, energy is derived from substances. The major substance that we get energy from are carbohydrates. Also, protein can provide us with energy, and fats can provide us with energy, but generally, there's not a lot of fats in goat feeds. Water, it's essential for life. A dry goat would consume about 1 gallon of water per day. Lactating doe about 2.5 gallons per day. Fresh green grass contributes water. In fact, during the winter, there may be enough water in wheat pasture that we do not have to give animals water. I say clean liquid water. Clean water encourages water consumption. And of course, when you have cold weather, liquid water is important because goats can't get very much out of ice. Also, water intake is a big factor in the prevention of urinary calculi. We'll talk about carbohydrates next. There are some sugars, especially in grasses in the afternoon with good sunshine. We can talk about complex carbohydrates then, such as the starch in grains, cellulose and hemicellulose, which there's more carbon and cellulose in the world than any other substance, and ruminants are able to digest it. But cellulose and hemicellulose are called fiber, which are very important for rumen health. Fiber is highly digestible in young plants, but as plants get mature, the fiber is less digestible. Fats have a high energy content. Forages are low in fat, and much of the fat in the goat's diet is wax, which is poorly digested. For dairy animals, we can add a rumen inert fat, such as megalac, or other protected fat that will provide extra energy at extra cost, kind of a little pricey. Greater than 6% fat in the diet can kill rumen microbes and cause reduced fiber digestion. Protein is composed of amino acids, and the goat is fairly efficient at using dietary protein. And this makes the goat more subject to urea toxicity from non-protein nitrogen. And for this reason, we do not recommend the use of non-protein nitrogen. Low quality forages that have less than 7% protein require protein supplementation for normal rumen function and intake of the forage. Gestation, the last 6 weeks will more than double the protein requirement, especially the last 2 weeks. Lactation increases the protein requirement by about 40%. B vitamins, which are your water-soluble vitamins, are synthesized by rumen microbes. We get a deficiency of thiamine called polyoencephalomalacia, about the only B vitamin deficiency that we see in goats. Your polyoencephalomalacia, which is often abbreviated PEM, is caused by several factors such as high concentrate diets, especially those with high levels of sulfur, which usually comes from molasses or some of the corn byproducts, such as corn gluten meal. Also, we can see polio using coccidiostat chlorid whenever we use it at a higher dose than on the label, or it is used for a longer period of time. When the animal is off feed or has rumen problems, B vitamins may be deficient due to the rumen not functioning and synthesizing those vitamins. Polio also can have the cases, we don't know why they're caused. It just happens in goats sometimes. Vitamins, we talk about the fat-soluble vitamins such as vitamins A, D, E, and K. Vitamin K is synthesized in the colon, and we don't see a deficiency of that almost ever. And so we don't worry about it. Vitamin A, which is present as carotene, which gives your forages their green color. So in good green forages, we see high levels of vitamin A. However, when we have bleached or weathered hay or stockpiled forage, we may see a deficiency of vitamin A. Vitamin D is a sunshine vitamin, and if your animal is getting 4 hours of sunshine a day, vitamin D should be no worry. Vitamin E is linked to selenium at high levels. It is at high levels in green grass or hay. When you get bleached out grass or hay, it will be at low levels. Some general recommended vitamin levels in the diet are shown here. Vitamin A at 5,000 international units per pound, vitamin D at 2,000 international units per pound, vitamin E at 90 international units per pound. Generally, in most of your mixed diets, if you look on the feed tag, we'll have quite a bit more than this of vitamin A and an excess of vitamin D. but usually you see 20 international units of vitamin E. This is because the old NRC, which was a standard for nutrient requirements for goats in 1980, called for 20 international units. Vitamin E is expensive, and so most of the feed people feel like, since they really didn't see problems at 20 international units, why go to the extra expense? Shift gears and talk about macrominerals: calcium, phosphorus, sodium, potassium, chloride, sulfur, and magnesium. Calcium, which the major source is browse, hay, and minerals. Phosphorus is the most deficient mineral in the diet in general. It's also the most expensive mineral. However, in certain cases, it may be in excess in byproduct feeds, such as wheat midds. Sulfur may be in excess in byproduct feeds, such as corn gluten meal or distillers' dry grains. And so one has to be careful about excesses of these in certain byproduct feeds. Magnesium is a factor in grass tetany, which can happen in goats and lush spring grazing. But goats, it's not as common in goats as cattle, but it can happen. Okay, we'll talk about a mineral-related disease, urinary calculi, which is seen in male animals. Usually it's animals that are fed high levels of grain for a long period of time. Some animals seem genetically predisposed. Many producers have told me that certain lines are predisposed to it that they've seen. 0.5% ammonium chloride, 1 to 1% is fairly effective. We want to just meet the minimum required level of phosphorus. We want our calcium to phosphorus level to be greater than 2. Urinary calculi is often seen in pet goats, basically due to the owners being too good and feeding them too much grain. Instead of feeding them grain for treats, they can use baby carrots. They're good pet treats, and so you can feed 2 or 3 carrots to your pet goats then and reduce the potential for urinary calculi. Trace minerals, which we're talking about: iron, iodine, copper, zinc, molybdenum, manganese, selenium, and cobalt. Basically, as far as deficiencies in a rural area, we can look at what the beef cattle people recommend, because if these minerals are deficient for beef cattle, they're also going to be deficient for goats. In Nebraska, the general mineral deficiencies include copper and zinc. Goats require probably 50% more copper than what cattle do, and a little more zinc. We can do plant analysis for determining mineral intake of animals. We can follow around behind the goat for an hour, watching what the goats eat and plucking samples of the plant then and get it analyzed. Probably a better way to monitor our trace minerals in animals is to use blood and liver analysis. And particularly, liver analysis are fairly good because the liver stores many of your trace minerals. And so the levels in the liver then reflect intake. And so one can pretty well diagnose deficiencies or toxicities with liver analysis. So whenever you have an animal mortality or you get an animal slaughtered for meat, take a slice of liver about the size of 2 of your fingers, and it can be sent off to the diagnostic lab at Michigan. They probably have the best setup in the US for doing liver analysis for minerals. One can get custom mineral formulations made for their goats if they have enough data or collect enough samples then to know what the minerals should be formulated with. Energy is the costliest item in goat nutrition just because the quantity of it that's required. We can provide energy utilizing pasture. which is generally our cheapest source of energy. Stockpiled pasture, which is pasture that we accumulate and then graze after frost, can be our second cheapest pasture. It is kind of like standing hay. We can also feed hay. With hay, it's important to prevent waste. Goats are particularly good about wasting hay. If you have a round bale, feed it in an elevated feeder or one of the slant bar feeders to help prevent wasting hay. If you have enough animals, you can roll the bale out then. Byproduct feeds are often cheaper than commercial feeds and can be utilized to provide energy. We need to be aware of mineral problems with some of them. And basically, most of your beef cattle people or beef cattle nutritionists know about these problems and can assist you. Commercial feeds are probably the most expensive way to provide energy. They do have an advantage in that they often have vitamins and minerals mixed into them. Extra energy is required during cold weather, and basically this was extrapolated from sheep data, providing extra energy during cold weather. We see here, as temperature goes down, we need to feed more grain. And this is for a 150-pound goat. And most of y'all know that in cold weather, animals require more energy or more grain. This is a graph of the animal's energy requirements across their production cycle. On the left, we have a measure of energy called TDN. And basically, a pound of TDN is a pound of pure 100% digested carbohydrates such as sugar. So we can visualize that kind of energy. So basically a little less than 1.5 pounds of TDN is required for animals that are dry or in early gestation. And this is based on about a 120-pound goat. Last 6 weeks of gestation here, you see an increase in the amount of energy required for that doe as those two or three fetuses are growing rapidly. Also, there's nearly a doubling in energy and a doubling in protein requirement during the last 6 weeks of gestation. Then the animal kids, and the amount of energy gradually tapers off. Energy after kidding is used for milk production, which gradually trails off. Although we don't have a good idea on meat goats about milk production in them. There's only 2 sets of data that I am aware of on meat goat lactation in the US. And then sometime when we wean the kid, the mother's energy requirement then goes back to the baseline or maintenance level. Here are diagrams or graphs of forage production, relative forage production. And you'll probably have to adjust this for Nebraska. Cool season grasses don't come out there very early, probably in early April then, and they may last till July. Some of these would be grasses such as orchard grass or brome grass. They will provide earlier grazing, but during the summer they tend to go dormant. Our warm season grasses then, as the name implies, when it warms up, sometime probably mid or late May for y'all, they will start growing and providing forage for animals, and provide forage through the winter, and then go dormant sometime in the fall about the time of frost. The reason why I show this graph is if you have animals that are kidding in January and February, and yet you have warm season grasses, the amount of energy and protein that are required are going to have to be provided by purchased feeds. And why do you kid in January or February or March? Because the Texas people do that. And the Texas people have a very different climate from yours. And so you may need to move kidding a little later There are other considerations in kidding, such as having kids available certain times of the year. You're selling registered animals. People like to see big animals, big and beautiful sell, forget the records. And so with your animal production will help you. Parasites are another factor, which you need to also consider. If you're rotational grazing, maybe you can get around the parasite problem in the summer. But just pointing out that what they do in Texas may not be applicable for y'all, that we may need to, it will help us often if we can match our kidding season closer to our grass production. Also, some people kid early, they don't know why, and those kids that are frozen to the ground don't bring very much on the market as compared to those that are kidded later. Here in Oklahoma, one producer moved his kidding from February to April and said he didn't know how insane kidding in February was till he moved it to April. No kids frozen on the ground, has sunlight to see the kids, make sure that they're doing all right, and they do much better. Protein on growing pasture is often adequate. However, when you get later in the season, you have poor mature pasture that's brown, where there's not much green in it, where you see a lot of stems, protein is going to be deficient, and also energy will too. Milk production requires significant protein, so you need to have good green forage to support that or supplement. Hay, most goat producers buy their hay. Most goat producers don't know the difference between good quality hay and poor quality hay. And most people that sell hay see a sucker coming. And unfortunately, many goat producers get taken advantage of. Either require a hay analysis for the hay that you buy, or get the hay analyzed and let the hay seller know that you're getting it analyzed. And maybe that will help him to be a little more honest with you. We can use protein supplement if we are deficient on protein. Various types of formulated feed and byproduct feeds can be used to provide protein. I want to talk a little bit about protein tubs, molasses tubs. In general, most of these at the intake with which you can get animals will only provide about 10% of the animal's protein requirement. So yes, if you just need a little protein, they'll help. But basically, in most cases, when you're deficient, they're inadequate. And they tend to be a little bit pricey too for the nutrients they provide. To get a hay or forage analysis, your county agent can guide you in getting that. And when you get the analysis, he'll discuss the results with you. Basically, you need analysis for protein, TDN, and acid detergent fiber. You can also get a mineral analysis if you want. If we want to look at what the diet should contain for animals at different stages or different classes of animals, if we're just maintaining a dry doe, basically, if she's 100 pounds, we're going to see she's going to consume about 2.2 pounds of feed per day total. We only need 55% TDN, which is a very mediocre quality hay. 7% protein is going to be adequate for her. Early gestation, she'll consume a little more hay or a little more dry matter, be it hay or forage. Energy-wise, she'll be all right with fairly low quality material. May need a little more protein. dough with 9% protein. Late gestation nutrient requirements really go up. A little more for this doe. She consumes 3.2 pounds of dry matter, but our requirement on TDN goes up very high. Several factors at work here. Late gestation, those fetuses are really growing rapidly, so they require a lot of energy and protein for the growth. Another problem is as they grow, they pooch into the rumen and reduce intake. In fact, the last 2 weeks of gestation, intake will be reduced about 30%. And so that's the reason we need higher quality or higher TDN hay, and we need high protein hay, such as an excellent quality orchard grass. Early lactation then, for the animal kids, she consumes quite a bit, 4.4 pounds, we would see. Then material, whether it's pasture or hay. Still require pretty good energy because there's quite a bit of energy in milk and requires quite a bit of protein also. Then often animals cannot consume enough in early lactation and they will lose body condition, putting their body stores into milk production. And this is normal. However, when they get down to much less than a body condition score of 2, milk production will be reduced. When we get to mid-lactation, they consume a little less quality as far as energy, and a little less protein are required. Good orchard grass will do us. Late lactation, the animal is consuming less feed. She requires less energy and less protein. Just a little bit about getting our hay analyzed. Basically, $17 or $18 will give us required analysis for protein and energy. If we're going to get a mineral analysis, it'll probably cost about $20 for a sample. And you might notice on the mineral analysis, basically we will not get iodine or selenium. Those generally require more expensive and specialty analysis. Providing for the vitamin requirements, green grass does good, browse sunshine. So during the summer, your animal's going to have plenty of your vitamins. Your liver stores vitamins, maybe 60 to 90 days supply. Green leafy hay is going to provide vitamins. Our mineral supplements will have vitamins in them. Most of our commercial feeds will have vitamins. We can use injections, but injections are limited. They will only really provide elevated levels in the blood for a couple of days, and then they go out in the urine. Feed is the best way to provide vitamins for our animals. Minerals which are present in forage consumed, hay, whatever. There are some body stores of minerals, depending on the mineral, can be limited. Green grass, of course, provides for minerals, especially calcium. Green grass is often likely to be deficient in phosphorus, depending on our mineral supplements provide for our mineral needs, and commercial feeds usually have mineral supplements mixed in them. Some people think they're doing really good if they are feeding trace mineral salt instead of standard white salt. Yes, this is better than white salt, provides about 20% of the copper, so that's going to help if we're copper deficient. Just a sniff of zinc and a little dab of selenium, which will help us if we're on the borderline. However, if we look at a complete mineral, we see it providing significant amounts of calcium and phosphorus, provides all of our copper requirement, half the zinc requirement, all of our selenium requirement, and all of our vitamin requirement. The reason why they don't provide, say, like 100% of zinc and a little less than 100% of other minerals is their mineral interactions, and you can get one mineral too high and suppress the absorption of another mineral. The next question is, when we're feeding our animal, how are we doing? And we kind of assess this by animal production, body condition scoring, animal reproduction, and animal health. Basically, animal production and body condition scoring tend to be more representative of protein and energy. If we have a deficiency of protein and energy, these are going to definitely impact our rate of gain on animals and our body condition. If we have good body condition and animal production, but we're having reproduction or health problems, then we would tend to look more towards minerals and, to a lesser extent, vitamins as being a problem. Pointing out, feeling that the animal in the lumbar region over your vertebral process there, how much flesh is over the vertebral process. Feeling that lateral rib, the short ribs there, how much flesh is covering them, how much of a shelf there is there. And also looking at a cross-section of the animal, how full that is there between your short ribs and your vertebral process. This tells about the animal's body condition. There's an excellent body condition scoring presentation on this website here. Actually, it's interactive body condition scoring that teaches you quite a bit about body condition scoring. We have cards here that give you an idea on doing body condition scoring. The animal on the left being body condition score 2. And you can see the vertebral processes there. You can see the kind of ski slope between the vertebral process and the short ribs there. And little muscular fat is felt. Basically, if you can feel the vertebra by pushing down on them, it's a body condition score of 1, which we never want to see an animal in body condition score 1. Body condition score 3 is where we'd like the animals to be most of the time. Spinous process doesn't feel like a ridge, it is smooth, but with small ripples indicating the bones. And the area between the spinous transverse process is filled with muscle and fat cover. Built as straight or slightly bowed out slope. We get to body condition score 4, the spinous process feels smooth but is not buried in tissue. Individual bones are difficult to feel. The area between the spinous and transverse process feels full and rounded. If your spinous process bones are buried in tissue, there you'll usually see a line down the back. Then body condition score is 5, and we don't need to see an animal in body condition score 5. We want animals going into the winter body condition score a little better than a 3, somewhere around a 3.5. And we want to try to maintain body condition score better than a 3 throughout the winter. Goats don't have very much flesh to protect them from the winter. A body condition score over 4 makes goats prone to pregnancy toxemia. When animals are lactating, they may lose body condition score down to less than a 2, especially dairy animals. However, in late lactation, they should be able to regain their body condition score. Talk about pregnancy toxemia. Caused by animals too fat or animals that are too thin and underfed the last 6 weeks of gestation. Sheep people, it's usually due to animals being too thin or underfed. Goat people love their animals to death, and it's due to animals being too fat. The last 6 weeks of pregnancy, the fetuses push against the rumen, reducing its size, the amount of feed the doe can eat. So we need to already have her in reasonable body condition. If we have her in excess body condition, This impacts her ability to process ketones in her liver, and she will get ketosis or pregnancy toxemia, which is preventable. You need to feed some grain in the last 6 weeks of pregnancy to prevent pregnancy toxemia. In general, the outcome of pregnancy toxemia is not good. People often will do C-sections trying to save kids and dough, which is a hard feat to accomplish and at great expense. However, there are some new products out, your flunixin megulin, which is useful in pregnancy toxemia, and most likely your vet knows, and really increases positive outcomes of pregnancy toxemia. Exercise is also important in preventing pregnancy toxemia. One veterinarian who raises goats used to keep up some of his old girls, close in the barn and let the rest go out and graze, wanting to watch them, and he observed that he had a greater incidence of pregnancy toxemia. So he let him go out and graze. Then the next year, no pregnancy toxemia. But it's been known for many years that exercise is important in prevention of pregnancy toxemia. Some of the factors that affect the level at which we feed, and when you're talking to people on how much they feed, you need to consider these factors. Dairy people, of course, especially during lactation, feed more or higher levels of grain than do meat goat people. Breed and individual within the breed. Some of your breeds that are very hardy, such as your Spanish, require less grain. Some individuals within the breed are better at rustling groceries and require less grain. Forage quality, which is very important for dairy animals. Weather, when we have cold weather, it increases our need for feed. Production level, especially milk. Doeling versus mature doe. Of course, the doeling needs more grain for growing. Commercial versus registered. Registered people, which are selling animals, people like to see those nice, fleshy, vigorous looking animals, and the show ring likes to see real fleshy animals. An animal adaptation or selection, for instance, a producer in Montana has never fed their animals grain for 20 years, and the animals have thrived, which they're basically Spanish animals. Talk a little bit about feeding dairy animals. Feed about a pound of concentrate, beginning in the transition period, which is 4 weeks before kidding to several weeks after kidding. Basically, we want to gradually increase concentrate where the doe is consuming 2 pounds a day by kidding. And we're going to gradually increase the grain until she's consuming about 3 pounds a day. Then at 3 or 4 weeks after kidding. We want to make those changes in grain gradually, provide her all the high quality hay she will eat. At 4 weeks, we're going to adjust the concentrate level of milk production with a ½ pound of additional concentrate per day, called lead feed, which will feed from 4 weeks to about 9 weeks after kidding. Basically, we feed about 3/10 of a pound of grain for every pound of milk over 3 pounds a day, as long as we have high quality forage, which is, here this is alfalfa, 18% crude protein, 125% relative feed value. Of course, if you have lower quality hay, you're going to have to feed more grain. Don't adjust the concentrate level by too much. Keep the animal on feed. Don't feed more than 2 pounds of grain per feeding to prevent enterotoxemia and acidosis. If you need to feed more than 4 pounds of hay per day, concentrate per day, arrange for a third feeding about 4 hours away from any other feeding, like late at night. This will prevent digestive upsets. Milk production peaks at 4 to 6 weeks of age. However, intake peaks at 8 to 10 weeks of lactation. Heavy milking doe will lose weight during this time of the year. Lead feeding can be phased out starting at week 8. In late lactation, we can reduce concentrate level as milk production decreases. However, we need to feed sufficient grain in the last 3 months of gestation so that the doe is in body condition score of 3 to 3.5. So that we want her in body condition that we want her to freshen in so that she doesn't have to gain weight during the dry period. Meat goats, we've discussed, have high nutrient requirements the last 6 weeks of gestation. Fetuses are growing in the room and reducing intake. 6 weeks prior to kidding, we're going to feed 1/2 to 1 pound of grain per day. A quality is important. May need to feed a little more grain than that. The hay quality is lacking. We're going to increase the grain by 1/2 pound 2 weeks prior to kidding and hold her there until she gets to be about 4 weeks in lactation, and then we can start reducing grain. Don't make sudden grain changes. Be feeding her 1 pound a day and then all of a sudden change her to 2.5 pounds per day. That's a good way to get her off feed. A dry goat with sufficient good quality pasture shouldn't require any grain. Some of the resources, body condition scoring. There's a producer ration calculator located at the second website mentioned here. We have goat handbooks that do have chapters on nutrition as well as many other aspects of goat production. Remember the nutrients that your goat needs. Provide adequate but not excessive nutrients from cost-effective sources. Animal body condition, reproduction, and health to see how your nutrition program is working. Okay, Randy. I guess I went a little bit quick on that, didn't I? Randy?